Where did the solar system's missing planets go? They didn't explode, they didn't drift away, they never even appeared, yet they have influenced our entire cosmic model. Planets like Vulcan, Nibiru, Planet 9, one after another, these phantom planets were invented, tracked, and then forgotten. So in the time that follows, we will uncover their entire story, from hypothesis to refutation. And then we will ask a deeper question. If they never truly existed, then what is it that is disturbing this universe? For millennia, humanity's understanding of the cosmos was extremely limited. The only planets we could see were just 5: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. These bodies were discoverable because they were bright and easy to spot, even with the naked eye in an age without modern telescopes. But by the end of the 18th century, everything began to change. An astronomer named William Herschel discovered a new ice-blue celestial body. At first, everyone thought it was just an ordinary star. It wasn't until later that they realized, with a shock, that it was a brand new planet, which we now call Uranus. It is more than 19 times farther from the Sun than Earth. Imagine, it takes 84 years for it to complete one orbit around the Sun. That means from the time a person is born to the time they grow old, Uranus has just completed one lap. Herschel's discovery not only revealed the existence of Uranus, but also binary star systems and nebulae. In that era, such a discovery almost redefined humanity's understanding of the structure of the universe. However, as scientists delved deeper into the orbit of Uranus, they found something strange. Its orbit seemed to be disturbed by some invisible force, showing subtle deviations that didn't fit the predictive models. This anomaly sparked a new line of reasoning. Scientists believed that perhaps another unknown planet was quietly tugging on it with its gravity. They began to rely on mathematical models to predict the position of this mysterious body. Finally, in 1846, they successfully captured that invisible pusher with a telescope, Neptune. Because it is so distant and its brightness so low, it is completely invisible to the naked eye. This was the first time humanity had verified the existence of a planet through calculation rather than observation. And this exploration did not end there. Around the same era, while observing Mercury, scientists discovered another anomaly. The orbit of this planet closest to the Sun showed deviations that didn't fit the model's predictions. It didn't orbit as stably as the other planets. Its path seemed to be gently pulled by some unseen hand. To explain this anomaly, a French astronomer, Urbain Le Verrier, proposed a bold hypothesis. Perhaps there was an undiscovered planet between the Sun and Mercury. No one had ever seen it, but it might be there, perfectly explaining Mercury's strange motion. He named it Vulcan, symbolizing heat, concealment, and mystery. This hypothetical planet was believed to have a scorching hot surface, orbiting very close to the Sun. It might have been the culprit behind Mercury's orbital disturbances. This idea quickly sparked widespread attention in the global astronomical community. Although some questioned that if it were as large as Mercury, it should have been discovered long ago, other scientists proposed another possibility. Vulcan was smaller than Mercury, and its orbit was closer to the Sun. It was precisely for this reason that it had long hidden behind the Sun's brilliant glare, making it difficult to observe directly. According to calculations, it was only about 13 million miles from the Sun, while Mercury at its closest point is 28.5 million miles. This meant Vulcan's distance was nearly half that of Mercury's. Even more fascinating, some predicted its orbital period to be 19 days and 18 hours, with an orbital inclination of 12 degrees, making it more tilted than other planets. Because it was so close to the Sun, even at its farthest point, it would still be lost in the Sun's glare. So scientists began to speculate that it could only be seen during a total solar eclipse, when the Moon completely blocks the Sun, revealing it in that brief sliver of darkness. This phenomenon could occur 2 to 4 times a year. Whenever an eclipse was coming, astronomers would point their telescopes to the edge of the Sun, hoping to catch a fleeting silhouette of Vulcan. They put in a tremendous amount of effort, observing time and time again. Some even claimed to have actually seen an anomalous bright spot during one eclipse. But the problem was, no one could repeat the observation, and no credible data was left behind. The existence of Vulcan remained at the theoretical stage. However, this long pursuit soon welcomed a new idea. At this time, a great figure who would change the face of science appeared, Albert Einstein. He proposed the revolutionary theory of general relativity. He claimed that gravity is not a simple pull, but the result of space-time being curved by massive bodies. Planets orbit the Sun like they are sliding on the curved surface of space-time. Mercury, in particular, with an orbit that isn't as round as other planets, wobbles slightly, as if being tugged by an invisible force. Einstein believed that the Sun's immense mass warped the surrounding space-time, thus changing Mercury's trajectory. This theory was elegant and stunning. But it took scientists a considerable amount of time to verify this theory. Because it required precise observations, the scientific community went to great lengths. In the end, they found that Einstein's explanation was the most reliable. However, even with this more concise answer, some scientists couldn't let go of the Vulcan hypothesis. After all, Mercury is always hidden in the Sun's dazzling glare, making it very difficult to observe, which made the dream of Vulcan hard to give up. But as time went on, more and more scientists chose to believe Einstein. They began to use total solar eclipses to verify relativity, rather than to search for Vulcan. And so, this observation not only ended the legend of Vulcan, but also put the scientific seal of approval on Einstein's theory. And the story of Vulcan is far from the end of the legend of hypothetical planets. Entering the 21st century, scientists began to focus on another mystery, a giant celestial body that might be lurking beyond Neptune. We call it Planet 9 or Planet X. This time, everyone is more cautious, although no one has actually seen it. Simulation data shows that it might be right there in that distant darkness, silently influencing the orbits of a group of small bodies in the Kuiper Belt. If it exists, its mass could be 10 times that of Earth, with a long, flat orbit that takes 10,000 to 20,000 years to go around the Sun. In comparison, Neptune only takes 165 years. It might be a gas giant, close in size to Neptune, but farther, colder, and more mysterious. Scientists have already used observatories in Hawaii to rule out about 78% of its possible orbits, but the remaining 22% is still enough for it to hide perfectly. Some call it the Wall-E of space, while others simply call it the shadowy Earth-like planet. Whatever its name, one thing is certain. Its existence would completely change our understanding of the solar system's boundary. If it is confirmed, it will be the 5th largest planet in the solar system. The region it dominates will also far exceed the sphere of influence of all other known planets. Of course, among these possibly existing planets, there is an even more legendary name, Nibiru. Remember the 2012 end of the world legend? One of the hottest doomsday scenarios at the time was that a planet called Nibiru would crash into Earth. This idea first came from a man named Zecharia Sitchin in the 1970s, who claimed in his book that Nibiru orbits the Sun every 600 years. It was like a long dormant cosmic ghost that occasionally returns. But this theory is full of holes. If it really had such an exaggerated orbit, it would have disrupted the gravitational structure of the entire solar system long ago. Not to mention, it never showed up in 2012. Some people even mistook the comet Elenin, which appeared in 2011, for Nibiru. But one look, and you could tell it was a comet. It had a coma and a tail, not a planet. And Comet Elenin disintegrated after approaching the Sun. Its fragments are now still drifting at the edge of the solar system, and will take at least another 10,000 years to completely leave this star system. So Vulcan wasn't found, Nibiru didn't hit Earth, but Planet 9 might still be out there. It's just waiting for us to find it. These conjectures sound a lot like astronomical urban legends, but they aren't just made up out of thin air. The researchers who support these views aren't just guessing. They rely on a whole set of complex mathematical models and computer simulations, trying to sketch out that possibly existing planet through theoretical means. And this hypothetical Planet 9 happens to explain all the strange anomalies in that bizarre region beyond Neptune. We are talking about the Kuiper Belt, a huge, donut-shaped ring region around the Sun, filled with icy debris. They are the leftovers from the early formation of the solar system, including comets, ice chunks, small bodies, and dwarf planets like Pluto. What's strange is that the orbits of the 6 most distant objects in this region are unusually aligned in the same direction. And they are all tilted down by 30 degrees, completely out of the orbital plane where the 8 major planets of the solar system lie. Even more bizarre, Although their orbital shapes and speeds are different, they always maintain this rare alignment. How low is the probability of this coincidence happening randomly? Only 0.007%. In other words, it's almost impossible for it to be a coincidence. And so, the theory of Planet 9 was brought up again. It might be a giant but unseen celestial body, whose gravity is quietly pulling these small bodies far from the mainstream orbits into the same direction. However, this initial model didn't hold up for long. It was challenged by observational biases and calculation loopholes, and was once considered an overinterpretation. Until 2017, when another study reignited this planet-hunting war. This time, it was a group of astronomers from Spain who proposed a new method. They focused their attention on a special type of object: extreme trans-Neptunian objects. These objects have extremely elongated elliptical orbits, with an average distance from the Sun of over 13 billion miles. This means they are floating far out at the edge of the solar system, and each orbit is a lonely and long journey. The researchers noticed a key detail. The focal points where these orbits intersect the solar system plane seem to hide a clue. Because whenever these small bodies travel near the focal point, they are more susceptible to the gravitational interference of other bodies. Their orbits could be changed, or even be flung out of their original paths. But here's the problem. If their orbits are stable, then everything is normal. But once the orbits deviate, and there's no clear source of disturbance around, it can only mean that there's an unseen giant stirring up this region. The conclusion of the study was clear. Some unknown force is influencing the motion of these bodies, and it is very likely to be Planet 9. According to simulation predictions, this planet could be 300 to 400 times farther from the Sun than Earth. It has never shown its face, but it has left a series of orbital fingerprints. To this day, the orbital behavior of these extreme trans-Neptunian objects remains our strongest evidence for finding Planet 9. If you are still skeptical of this theory, let's look back at history. The discovery of Neptune was precisely because of the orbital anomalies of Uranus. At that time, Newtonian mechanics couldn't perfectly explain Uranus's motion, so scientists hypothesized that an unknown planet was secretly pulling on it. They then used mathematics to deduce the position of that body, and sure enough, they found Neptune. Fast forward to 2021, and the topic of Planet 9 was ignited again. After correcting the old model, researchers proposed a brand new hypothesis. Perhaps the orbit of this mysterious planet isn't as distant as we thought. It might only take about 7,000 years to go around the Sun. This was huge news, because it meant its orbit was much shorter than the previously estimated 10,000 to 20,000 years. In other words, it might be closer to us. If so, our telescopes might really be able to capture its image in the foreseeable future. Even more exciting, the latest paper believes that there is a 99% probability that those Kuiper Belt objects with strange orbits are indeed being influenced by this unseen giant, and it's not some coincidence or observational error. You heard that right. 99%. The probability of this whole thing being a coincidence has now been compressed to 1 in 250, much stronger than the 1 in 10,000 from the 2016 hypothesis. This is why we are still persisting in searching for it today, because every improved model, every precise elimination is shrinking its hiding space. As we mentioned before, the research team in Hawaii, using the Pan-STARRS telescope and rapid response system, has already ruled out 78% of its possible hiding places. It sounds like looking for a needle in a cosmic haystack, but we are starting to have a map in our hands. But even so, Planet 9 is still a ghost. It seems to be flickering in and out of existence at the dark edge of the solar system, leaving a series of mysteries but never showing its face. But astronomers and science enthusiasts have not given up. They firmly believe it's out there. And perhaps soon, we will welcome that night when its existence is confirmed. If Planet 9 really exists, then it will have nowhere to hide under the surveillance of this system. But even with more and more evidence, the existence of Planet 9 has still not reached a consensus in the scientific community. Why? Because it's not the only possible explanation for these anomalies. Some scientists have proposed that perhaps there isn't a large ghost planet, but a whole group of small bodies in the Kuiper Belt, such as dwarf planets, comets, and even some distant moons. Their collective gravity is what is shaping these strange orbits. There's an even bolder hypothesis that it's not a planet at all, but a more extreme entity, a black hole. A small but extremely dense black hole might be quietly lurking at the edge of the solar system, using its own powerful gravity to disturb the motion of the bodies in that region. After all, a black hole is one of the deadliest and most powerful sources of gravity in the universe. It could completely mimic the effects similar to Planet 9. But then came a more radical view. Some physicists believe the problem might be with ourselves. Perhaps our understanding of gravity itself is wrong. They proposed a theory called modified Newtonian dynamics, which suggests that in extremely distant interstellar regions, gravity no longer operates as we are familiar with it. Those cold, small bodies far from the sun behave so strangely, not because they are being influenced by some planet, but because they are beginning to feel the subtle pull of the entire Milky Way's gravity. This idea sounds very avant-garde, but even the supporters of this theory admit that the evidence is far from sufficient. It still requires a much larger amount of observation and data verification. So the truth about Planet 9 is still up in the air. But scientists' imaginations will never stop there. While Planet 9 has yet to be confirmed, another group of researchers has thrown out a new candidate, a terrestrial planet. It might be as large as Mars, or close to the mass of Earth, with an orbit located right at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. But with this comes another problem. If it's really that small, its gravity might not be enough to clear its own orbital path of debris. This was one of the main reasons Pluto was demoted. So don't get too excited. This so-called terrestrial planet might end up being just another dwarf planet. At the end of the video, have you noticed a problem? Everyone is asking where Planet 9 is, but very few are asking what it is. We assume it's a celestial body, with mass and orbit and controlled by gravity. But what if it's not? What if it's some kind of boundary, a crack in the structure of the universe, a variation in physical constants, an illusion that we mistake for a planet? Then are we tracking a celestial body, or the end of reality itself?